Okay, what is the test at the end of this week? What's that going to be about? Can you name a thing we've talked about so far? I know over a weekend it's like, what are we even doing in math? Yes, graphing. If I asked you to graph, don't do it. But if I asked you to graph that, you'd start by hopefully knowing what the parent looks like. Is it a V? Is it a U? Is it a butterfly? Is it a V? No, it's not a V. Okay, what is it? It's a U shape. And hopefully you know it's been changed in a few ways. I've taught you the order of this. And remember how I said you start on the inside? Okay. And then you've learned to not trust the inside, right? It may seem like it moves this way, but actually moves that way. Then I taught you high vo. Does that ring a bell? Horizontal on the inside. And what's vo mean? Vertical outside. Okay, good. So do you get that these two things are on the outside of the parentheses, and therefore those are both vertical things? Vo, vertical on the outside. Okay. Now, what if I needed to find a point on this? You need to be able to find points on this. So, watch what I do here. What's the point? Get that? I give you a -1. You have to figure out what point is on this graph. -1 goes in, and what do you get? -1 goes in, and you get 0 squared times -3, which makes 0. I just told you the something something of this graph. X-intercept or Y-intercept? X-intercept is where what? Y equals 0. And the Y-intercept will be where? X is 0. Okay, awesome. The Y-intercept is where X is 0. X-intercept is where Y is 0. And so I want you to try the other one. If X is 0, what do you get? Don't say it. Compare it with the kid next to you. When you put in 0, what do you get? Okay, here's officially who I want you to show. Today, since neither of you guys have somebody across from you, you're going to turn to the guy behind you. These two, you're going to show the person across from you. These two rows, person straight across from you, except in the back there, you're going to have to turn and help with the girls behind you. Not that they need help. These two rows, you're going to compare straight across, except the back two kids. You guys compare. And then you, and you're going to be comparing with her. You have two people to compare with. Okay? Show them and see if you got the same thing. Okay. Did you put a 0 here? What's 1 squared? 1 times -3? Did you get -3? Awesome. That's got x equal to 0, so it's the what? Y-intercept. Okay. All right, cool. Do you think you could find a few more points? You don't have to right this second, but on the test, you'd want to find 5 points? I want you to use logic here now. If I have -1, 0, dot, and 0, -3, dot, and then my other points do this, do you get the feeling something's wrong? Yeah, it's not passing the vertical line test. So that would be a problem. That can't be right. Okay, well, if it's got 5 points, do you think it could possibly be doing that and then to make a U-shape kind of a thing? Isn't it supposed to be a U-shape? But wait a minute, it's a negative in front of the U-shape. Doesn't that mean it's supposed to be upside down? So maybe it's going to do something like that. You get what I'm saying? All right. So now I've given you 2 points. All right, you helped me, but would you please find 3 more points that are on this graph? You get to pick anything you want for X. Just don't pick crazy big numbers or crazy small numbers. Pick numbers that are kind of close to your other numbers. These worked out pretty good, so pick things that are near 0 or 1 or -1. So maybe 1. 1 would be pretty logical. If I put in 1, I get 2 squared is 4. Negative 12. That got pretty big pretty quick. How about negative 2? If I put in negative 2, negative 3. Ooh, that was a good one. You know why? Because these are like mirror points of each other. And as soon as that flipped over like that, it starts to help me see, oh, it's the upside down part of the parabola. All right. How do I know this thing was never actually moved up or down? There was nothing out here. There's nothing in that spot, so it never got moved up or down. All right. Now, one of the things you'll need in your back pocket is to know what all of these look like. Would you please make a little sketch of all of these? I'll try to do them in the order you learned them. I know you learned these before you got here. You knew x squared before you got here. I think you knew absolute value, the V-shaped one. Did you know that one before you got here? Okay. How about x to the third? Had you ever seen that one before you got here? Okay, if you haven't, I'll remind you what it looks like in a sec. And then there's square root of x. I know at some point somebody showed you that, but you might have forgotten it. And lastly, what do you think the most complicated one is? 1 over x. Would you please sketch all 6 of those? And then, here's the way I want you to check your neighbors, because I don't want you to try to look at all 6. It's too detailed. I want you to pick the one that you are the least certain of. Like, okay, out of these 6, and circle the one you think you might be wrong on, and compare with the kid next to you. And it's unlikely, if you're got the same graph as them, that you both would have made the same mistake. You know what I mean? So pick the one you're least sure of, and circle it in like red or something, and compare it with the kid next to you. All right, I'm going to pause for a second while you give that a try. Okay. The more you just talked about that with the kid next to you, the better. You're going to get more out of that the more you talk to them and compare and stuff. Y equals x is a line that runs like that. Raise your hand if you had that one right. Okay, awesome. Next one, x squared. It's just your classic parabola. Now, if you shifted yours around, you didn't truly graph x squared. Like I saw somebody who had theirs down there. That's nice, but it's been moved down. Yours should be right here. If you wanted to move down, you'd have to say like -3 or something, and that'd be different. Okay, how about this one? V-shape. Okay, next one, x to the third. I've heard that one called the snake. Next, square root of x. I like to call this one the ramp, because nobody I knew had a good name for it. Kind of looks a little bit like a ramp. You walk up the ramp to get into the spaceship kind of thing. All right, anyway, next one, 1 over x. I've heard this one called the butterfly, and it took me a while to see it. But then I realized, oh, you're saying it's like that's a wing, and then that's a wing. And then like here's the body, and these little antennas. Anyway, yeah, not an art major. So that one. Now I want to call your attention to something. It's really easy to, by accident, put this the other way and put it like this. I want you to think for a second. Do you get that that's been reflected? The red one is what you start on, and the blue one's what you'd get if you reflected it either way. Think about it. If you reflect it across the x-axis, you get the blue one. If you take the red one and you reflect it across the y-axis, you get the blue one. Isn't that weird? So if I put up this, I think everybody would go, oh, you changed that. Like, that's not the normal parabola. You know what I mean? You can tell it's obviously not a normal parabola, okay? But if I put this up here, a lot of people wouldn't even notice that I did anything wrong. You know what I mean? Because it looks a lot like the actual one. You get what I'm trying to tell you here? Okay. So what is the graph of this? Well, that's actually not 1 over x. It's close. It's 1 over x except a negative. And now think about it. Do you get why a negative here in front of it would do the same thing as a negative here on the bottom of it? Imagine for a second it was like 1/5. Do you think it would matter whether the negative's here or a negative is there? It's going to be the same exact thing. So that's why this graph, whether you put the negative on the outside or the inside, it's the same. Okay? That's the only graph that's like that. Otherwise, horizontal and vertical reflections are very different. Except that one. Okay. So now, did I get through all 6? Yes, I did. All right. That's not the normal one, right? Here's the normal one, except it's been moved over. One of the asymptotes stayed the same. One of the asymptotes moved. Is the x equals asymptote moved or the y equals asymptote moved? Would you agree it's this pink one has been moved? So is that an x equals thing or a y equals thing? It's an x equals thing. It's a very easy mistake to make. Because that one, the pink one runs like the y-axis, so you think it's going to be y equals, but it's not. The y-axis is actually x equals 0. So that pink line might be like x equals 2. And that would be an asymptote line. Do you remember that this is the only graph I do not require 5 points on? In this one, all I need is this point, and the asymptotes running in the right spots. Because from there, the line just gets closer and closer and closer to these asymptotes as you go further and further down. Closer and closer, closer and closer. Okay, so now what's left? There's 1, 2, 3, 4 things happening here, and the order totally matters. You need to use words like, first, I'm going to reflect over the x-axis. Not saying that's the right answer. Okay, but use words like reflect and x and horizontal and vertical and left and right and up and down and stretch and shrink and stretch factor or shrink factor. Those are all words you could use. Think of that as like a word bank. Okay? The very first thing is not that hard on this one, which means overall this problem is going to not be that hard. Because I don't know if you remember this, but I said, if you get the very first step right, usually kids get these right. If they get the first step right, usually they get the thing in order. You know why? Because the first step is an inside thing. And that'll right away tell me whether they're remembering the whole stuff on the inside is opposite what you think. You know what I'm saying? So the very first step will tell, do they know where to start? And do they know that since it's on the inside, that things are opposite of what they would see? Okay, would you please make a list? 1, 2, 3, 4, using those words, horizontal, vertical, etc. I'm going to pause for a second while you write down what you think the order is that this should be done in. You are correct. Right 4 is a great start. And that seems like it should go over to where the negatives are, which would be on the left, but you have to force yourself to do the opposite of that. Okay, next, it goes to the outside, and most people do the outside right because it's not the whole opposite thing. That is before that, because that's a multiply, and that comes first. And you trust it because it's on the outside. The only thing you could mess up here would be forgetting to say vertical. Okay. Now, it could be a vertical stretch first or a vertical flip first. Again, one of the reasons that it doesn't, if you start right, it's not that big of a deal. Next, you could have either vertical stretch. I say to stretch before you flip. Or a vertical reflect. because those are the next two things. But one thing wasn't clear enough. Vertical reflect, there's only one way to do that. But how about vertical stretch? What do I have to say about that? Factor what? Factor 3. All right, and then the only thing left is the 7, which is what? Up 7. Now, one last thought. I always want you to start on the inside, but usually we don't start with telling people this because it adds complication. It's kind of like when the English teacher told you that the vowels are A, E, I, O, and U, and then they start telling you, oh, and sometimes Y can act as a vowel. You know what I mean? They add the little weird exception later after you kind of got used to A, E, I, O, U. Okay, well, the same idea here. You're supposed to start on the inside, but you can actually start on the outside. You can. You can. Then you have to follow the same rules on the outside as we did before, which is I trust the stuff on the outside. I can do the stuff on the outside in the normal order. And then you go to the inside, and what do you have to do on the inside? Opposite of what you would think order. And that actually is true. And in pre-calc then, when you move to pre-calc, we have like an answer key that, oh, such a pain because the kid can do it in like 5 different right ways. I'm not saying everything's right though. See, that's the thing that people start thinking is, so you're saying it doesn't really matter? No. There's either you start on the inside and do it in the opposite order and then go to the outside, or you start on the outside, do it in normal order, and then go to the inside and finish with the opposite order. So what I want you to do is just always start on the inside. But why am I even telling you that? Because I want you to know it is legal, and sometimes the answer key is made by a teacher who is doing it from the outside in. And I don't want you to think, oh, they're wrong. The answer key's wrong. Actually, you can do the outside stuff first if you want to. So if you ever see a key like that, don't freak out. Or if the final's multiple choice and one of the way you're expecting is not on there, maybe they did it from the outside in. All right. So you keep on doing it from the inside out, please. Because honestly, it's the most logical way to do it. You take any hard math problem, you start on the inside. You got parentheses inside parentheses, that's where you start. So it makes sense to me to always start on the inside. All right, here's one that at least 5 kids in here are going to get wrong. At least. Try to be one of the ones that doesn't get it wrong. Ready? There's only 4 things, but a lot of people make a mistake on this one, on the order that you should do it in. It'll either be an order mistake or a wording mistake on a lot of people's papers. In fact, I'm going higher than 5. I'm going to go with 7 people in here make a mistake on this one. Okay, so make a list. 4 things in order. Remember, I want you to start on the inside. If you're ever forced to from a key or something, you can do it from the outside in, but only do that if you're checking a key that's backwards. All right, I'm going to pause while you give this a try. All right, how many of you knew to start with left 1 on this one? Oh, there was only like 7 hands. Ha! I gotcha. It's not left 1. You aren't supposed to start with left 1. I told you there'd be like 7 mistakes on this, and there we go. Okay, and it's probably more than that because some of you guys are like looking really worried. Like, what? I thought you said... Okay, listen. Before, there was a choice between plus or times. Now there's a choice between parentheses or multiply by 3. And people think of this as a plus. Yeah, there's a plus, but it's because of the parentheses. So if I asked you this, aren't parentheses normally first? Right? We're on the inside where things are not normal. So the parentheses do not go first. So therefore the 3 is first, and therefore it's not left 1. It is, what is that 3? How about, can we agree on this? Is it a horizontal thing? Horizontal shrink, very good. It's not a stretch like it seems. It's a shrink. And then horizontal shrink factor, and don't be fooled. Factor 1/3. So many little opposite ofs, like the opposite of what you would think. Seems like factor 3, so it's not. Seems like it's a stretch. Nope, it's a shrink. And it seemed like that shouldn't be first, but it is. It's parentheses compared to a multiply. Parentheses should normally be first, so it's not first. All right, then step 2 is left 1. Don't feel bad. In my first hour, only 2 kids got that one right. Okay. Then, how about the third and fourth step? Everybody got right, which is these two. And as long as you don't screw up the wording, do you remember that the order doesn't matter because they're part of the same number? Now, I did suggest that you stretch before you flip because that works in gymnastics and it works in math. Okay, so stretch. You don't have to do the stretch first, but I'm going to do stretch first. And that's a vertical on outside, right? Vertical stretch factor. I'm going to trust what I see is a 4. And then it's a vertical reflect. Any questions on that one? How many of you had the last 2 steps right? Okay, good. All right, let's do one more and see if we can get up to like 90% of kids getting this right. Question? All right, how do you know that it is factor 4 and not negative 4? Okay, a stretch factor can't be negative. The negative is just a completely different thing. If there's a negative, there's a reflection. Okay, so I get it's part of the 4. It seems like it should be there. But when you include the negative, you're talking about a reflection, not a stretch. Okay, so just always, here, it's simple. These stretch and shrink factors, they'll always just be positive numbers. It's just whether or not going to be they're going to be the number you see or 1 over that number. All right, let's do one more. Wrap it all up one. This will be a 5-stepper in order with all the words right. Okay, once you're done, compare to the kid next to you. One, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep, 5 steps. And by the way, you grab the average regular pre-calc kid today and ask them what order this is in. They're going to mess it up. These are hard. You get tested on this in pre-calc even. My classes, though, in honors pre-calc, and after I've just practiced it with them like I just did with you, they're all good. All right, I'm going to pause for a second while you compare this to the kid next to you. 5 steps. Remember how I said if you start right, you'll probably get it right? Compare your first step with the kid next to you right now and see if you started right. Pausing. Okay. I think you guys are getting this now that that's a parentheses and they're normally first, so they're not first. So I saw a lot of kids answering this right, and they said that it was a horizontal because it's on the inside, shrink because it seems like it's a stretch, so it must be the opposite of that. Factor seems like 2, so it's 1/2. Number 2, write 3. Number 3, go to the outside, and these 2 things together are first before the 7 is anyway. So that's 3 and 4, and these can reverse, but I suggest stretch before you flip. So therefore that's a vertical because it's on the outside, vertical stretch factor 8, and then vertical reflect. And last but not least, the 5th step up 7. Raise your hand if you were perfect. Awesome, we got almost everybody on that one. Okay. Do you have any questions about what order you're supposed to do stuff in? All right, now, do you see how gruesome that would be to actually have to graph on a test? But do you get, if you've got 5 dots, you could play the connect the dot thing? It's not like it's impossible. So find me 1 point that's on it. Find 1 point that's on it. XY chart. Because if you just repeat that process, you find yourself 5 points, you graph them, you'll get the idea, oh, it's a V shape. And hopefully, you'll have found one of your 5 points will be that highest spot on the V shape. And now, no matter what you picked before, everybody stick in a 3. If you already chose that one, you get to leave it alone because you're extra smart, because that was a smart point to pick. X is 3. Everybody put in X as 3 as one of your points. Do you get why that's extra sneaky smart? Because what does it make the whole inside thing? 0, and then you times that by the 8, and it's still 0, and then you add the 7, and you get, so I got 3, 7. Raise your hand if you had that one right. Awesome. And one more thing about that spot. This is kind of cool. That is the one dot that's different than all the others. Do you get this as an upside down V? Because of that negative made it upside down, and it's a V because it's an absolute value problem. If it's an upside down V, what do you think 3, 7 is? That very top point. Know why I know? Because this was in what's called vertex form. And that's the vertex of my shape. And if you make this part equal to 0, then you have y equals 7. And you have, therefore, whatever makes this part 0, 7. 3 is what makes that part 0, 3, 7. I didn't explain that very well, but bottom line, it's not that hard if you can make the inside 0. Okay, so let's see if you caught that well enough to catch this. What's the key point on this one? XY chart. It's a parabola this time. The key point's going to be the low spot, the vertex. But you already know the vertex. Somebody does, I guarantee it. Raise your hand when you are the kid who knows what, what. See, 4 people already have it. Okay, try to think. What did I just say a second ago about a smart thing to pick for right here? Remember? What is it? I put in a 4, and that makes the whole inside 0, and then, what's the answer? 4, 15. And that is the vertex of my shape. Yes?
So now you have all the intersection of the intersects as well, but in it, don't you have right 4 and then up 15? Isn't that just the thing? If you look at it, you can figure it out.
Very good. But one thing to caution you, this doesn't work on every shape, okay? But it does work for things that have a vertex. You know what I mean? Like not everything has a vertex. Like a straight line that goes forever. Does that have a vertex? No, it doesn't have a vertex. Okay, so yes, you've caught on. And I like to say it in terms of what makes this 0, because it's also just smart strategy even on things that don't have a vertex. If you're trying to figure out a good point to use on this one, even though it's not a vertex, I'd still try to figure out what makes the inside 0, and what makes the inside 0 in this case? 15. And then what's that in this case? Well, 15, 16 must be an important spot. It is an important spot, it's just not the vertex. It's the spot where this ramp thing starts. And then last but not least, this one is especially important that you get. You can't really put a 0 in here. But 0 is still good to find, because then when you found it, you actually figured out that there's an asymptote at 0, do you get this would have been 0, 3, but there's no point there because this is impossible, so this is an asymptote. So finding the thing that makes the inside 0 is kind of a really smart spot. All right, I've covered everything. We could have the test like tomorrow, except we're not going to. Test isn't until Friday. What the heck are we going to do between now and Friday then? Party every hour. No, that's not it. Even though I do have a smoke machine and I do have a disco ball, that I'm saving for March 14th, which is Friday, 3.14. All right. So what's your homework like? Honestly, now that I've given you these really tough ones, it's actually laughably easy. It really is. The only thing that's different at all is they give you pictures like this and they say, here, take this squiggly thing and move the little stick figure where if the stick figure is f of x, you move it f of x plus 3. And I hope you can transfer what I taught you before to this and say, oh, you're saying to move it left 3. So you just take this and move it left 3. How do you do that? Well, you can either grab it and move it if you have an iPad, or if you're doing it on paper, you'd move everything left 3 spots, exactly 3 spots left of where it was, and connect the dots. And then there, I just moved it left 3. The idea? That's the only thing that we haven't talked about. And then, how are you supposed to graph things like this, Mr. Server? You never taught us how to make the parent graph and move it up 7. And I kind of did, but I didn't talk about it very much because what's your best friend in graphing? XY chart. And you make a bunch of dots and you connect the dots. That's all you have to do. Hopefully you'll know that this is a V shape moved 5 to the right and up 7. So here's a V shape, 5 to the right, up 7. And you should know it kind of looks like that. But I think the XY chart's better because you have to get exact points anyways. I wouldn't accept that. That has to have exact dots in the right spots. Otherwise, it's a sketch instead of a graph. All right, 12 minutes left. Let's go look at the worksheet. And I'll tell you which ones you can skip. I'll pause for a second while I pull up the worksheet. Okay. So let's start. Number 1, A. That's reflected over the x and translated down 5. Are they asking me to graph it? No. What's the directions say? Write an equation. How do I write an equation for that? Y equals x to the third. No, I just moved mine to the left 7 and down 5. What was I supposed to do? So what should I put on the inside there? Or the outside? Or where? What do I do? That's my graph down 5, but what's the other part? Reflected over the x-axis. Which one's that? Is that vertical or horizontal? It's the only thing you got to figure out, because if it's vertical, it'll be on the outside, a vo, right? If it's horizontal, it'll be on the inside. That's a high if it's on the inside, right? So what is the x-axis? I gave you, and I think I said these words before, vertical and horizontal. Have I ever uttered those words in your class before? Okay, I did that at a different hour then. Okay. Guess what that tells you? It tells you that vertical is going over the x-axis. And horizontal is going over the y-axis. If I get the line x equals 4, that is a vertical line. Get where I'm going here? That's a vertical line. Do you get x equals 4? Just to clarify, some people think this is x equals 4. No, that's what? That's y equals 4. Okay, so what's x equals 4? It's a vertical line at 4. So that's why I think the vertical and the horizontal things are worth hearing. Now, if you don't want to learn it that way, it's totally fine. Here's what a kid could have done. You could say, okay, it's going over the x-axis. Well, that's the x-axis. So which way is it reflecting if it's going this way, over that x-axis? I guess it's going vertically, right? All this falls apart if you don't know what vertical means. Vertical's up and down, okay? So this is vertical, and since it's vertical, going over the x-axis, also known as vertical, so you connect vertical and x in your head, then vertical's on the outside, negative in front. And there's nothing needed on the inside because there's nothing horizontal going on. There we go. Let's do the next one. Y equals 1 over x. Reflected over the y-axis, well, and if the other one was vertical, this must be horizontal. So it's horizontal. What does that tell you? Inside or outside? Horizontal. Inside, so there's a negative on the inside. And last but not least, up 7. How does that go then? Plus 7. You get 2 free answers. All right, you can skip E as in elephantiasis. Terrible condition where like an infection kind of a thing where, let's say you get elephantiasis of your foot, it swells up and looks like an elephant foot. It's just like 6 times as big as normal. It's just, whoa. When I have nightmares, go look it up. Elephantiasis. Let's go down, and you can skip D as in donkey here. No, wait, I'm wrong. We're going to skip C as in cat, because this one, people mess up D all the time, and I want you to not mess this up on the test. Do you get some kids go, well, you said things in front like this is a vertical stretch? That 3 is not a vertical stretch because it's being subtracted with the square root of x minus 4. Do you get I could have just as easily put that 3 at the end here? You get what I'm saying? That negative is a reflection. That 3 should really be at the end. Did you catch that? All right. We like to test people on that, so be careful. Okay. Now, what's the description of that one? That's only got 3 steps. And you start on the inside, and that way your answer will make sense with everybody else's in the class. So you go left 4. And what's the second thing in the description? What kind of reflect? It's on the outside, so it's a vertical reflect. And then the last thing is up 3. Okay, good. Okay, then in this section, we'll skip E and F. But remember, if you want a challenge, you're like, I've been getting a lot of these wrong. I should probably have an extra couple. I had a kid tell me this morning when they came in for extra help, because on Mondays you can get extra help. They said, I did all the extra problems that we were supposed to skip to try to learn this better, but I still want you to show me this one thing. That's perfect. That's what I hope you do. If you're like getting a thing wrong, try it again on the skipped ones and see if you can get it right there. If you're still having trouble, come in the mornings. Remember, the next day to come in would be on Wednesday. Mondays, Wednesday during Mass, and Thursdays. Okay? All right. And that's all I have. Oh, wait, let's do one of these together. Let's do this, that box one that has to move. So let's move this one. So if you can't tell this, but there's no bottom on this. There's no like line across the bottom. Some people just kind of assume that this must be like a trapezoid. There's no bottom on it. But it really doesn't matter if you put a bottom on it. It's not going to change what we have to flip. We have to flip this outside, vertical on outside. Okay, so then if this is a vertical flip, then every point has to get flipped that way. What about the ones that are on the line? Where would you flip them to? You can't. They're like stuck to the mirror. So, final answer on this one would be the green one. Get the idea? Okay, honestly, I think we could review tomorrow and test Wednesday and be 2 days ahead. We won't do that, but I'm gonna, in the next couple days, I'm gonna throw in the top 20 on one of your days because we have such a cushy week that I seriously think you're ready to take the test now, but we'll practice a little bit and we'll throw in the top 20 and then we'll take the test on Friday like everybody else. It's actually one group that might be testing on Monday. I don't know how they got so far behind, but and they haven't tested on their first 20 either, so you guys are rocking. All right, that's all I got for you for today.